to divide a polynomial by a binomial. Example. This is x to the third plus 2x squared plus x minus 3. And you're dividing that by long division by x minus 3. You're dividing this by this. This is a binomial because it has 2 items in it. This is a polynomial because it has more than 3. 3 is a trinomial, 2 is a binomial. Here's what you do first. Take a look at the x and figure out what do I have to multiply x by in order to get x to the third. Remember, you add the exponents when you multiply. So if I have x to the first and I want to end up with x to the third, what exponent is missing in there? To go from x to the first to x to the third. X squared, yeah, so it would be 3 minus the 1. That's how you know what it is. So you would have x squared, and put that x squared above. Oh, I don't need anything that big. I need a smaller marker. There we go. We'll just try to keep it. X squared. Now go back and multiply that x squared by your binomial on the left. So x times x squared is x to the third. You add the exponents and write that down here. And then multiply that x squared by the negative 3. Negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x squared. So again, what we did is we found x squared by figuring out what's missing when you multiply x by a constant to get x to the third. X times x squared gives me x to the third. And once I found this x squared, I do x times x squared to get x to the third, and then x squared times minus 3 to get minus 3x squared. Just like any long division problem, you subtract at this point. So x to the third minus x to the third is gone. What is positive 2x squared minus a negative 3x squared? 2x squared minus a negative 3x squared. 5x squared, yes. We have to drop our x and start over again. X times something is 5x squared. X times something is 5x squared. Think of it like this. 5x squared over x. Or even 5 times x, that's x squared, over x. What cancels out? What can I cancel out in this thing here? Yeah, x over x. And I'm left with what? 5x, yeah, so that's what I have to multiply x by to get 5x squared. So I write that down here. 5x. And now I have to go back and do multiplication again. 5x times x. 5x times x is 5x squared. And then 5x times the minus 3. 5x times minus 3 is minus 15x. And subtract. 5x squared minus 5x squared is 0. It's gone. But now you have to do x minus a negative 15x. That's the same as saying 1 minus a negative 15. That would be 16x. Okay, so we still have something to drop down here. So drop down the 3, the minus 3, and start over again. What do I have to multiply x by to get 16x? X times something is 16x. Or, yeah, or you could write it like this, 16x over x. What cancels out? The x's, and you're left with 16. So put a 16 there at the end. And do your multiplication now. 16 times x is 16x. And 16 times a minus 3 is minus 48. Okay, when you subtract, these are gone. And negative 3 minus a negative 48 should be 45. Should be 45.
Where did you get 48?
Now, like any long division problem, when you have stuff left over, like the 45, that's a remainder. You can write it like this. And I may need an extra space. I might have to insert a page to write this out since I'm out of room. Our final answer up here on the top is what you write. And it's going to look like this. X squared plus 5x plus 16. And you have a remainder of 45. A remainder of 45. It should be 16, yeah, 16. You could also do it this way, x squared plus 5x plus 16, and then plus 45 over what you were dividing by, which was x minus 3. We'll just go ahead and write it this way. Another example. You must divide this polynomial here by x plus 5. And your first step is to figure out what you multiply x by from here to get 3x squared. Your first step could be written like this. Write the 3x to the third out and put it over x. And if that doesn't help you to simplify it, then write out the x's like this. You have 3 x's because it's x to the third. Remember, we're getting this from right here. 3x to the third, and divide that by x to figure out what you need. What cancels out in this, top to bottom? Do I have a 3 on the bottom? No. Do I have an x on the bottom? Yes. So I can cancel out this x with this x. And I'm left with what on the top? 3x squared. Yeah, because I have 2 x's and a 3. 3x squared goes over top of the other x squared in the beginning of the problem. Again, we want to figure out what x has to be multiplied by to get 3x squared, and we just found that. If you multiply x by 3x squared, you get 3x to the third. And we found that by dividing this by x. And we put the answer above the other x squares. Alright, now once you get that, you have to multiply what you find here by each of these items. So 3x squared times x is 3x to the third. Because you add the exponents 2, and there's a 1 there on the x, it's not written. And then multiply 3x squared by 5. 3 times 5 is 15. And you just keep the x squared. Next we have to subtract. And when you do that, 3x to the third minus 3x to the third is 0, so those are gone. And now do 4 minus 15. 4 minus 15 is a negative 11, and keep that x squared. But we have to drop down our next item over. That's a minus 2x. So drop that down. And we have to figure out what we have to multiply x by to get this negative 11x squared. To do that, we can do some division down here. Here's a negative 11, and we'll write out x squared. And we're dividing it by x. That comes from this over this because we want to figure out what we're multiplying x by to get to the negative 11x squared. So down here, we don't have anything on the bottom that cancels with negative 11, but we do have an x that cancels with 1x on the top. So that leaves us with negative 11x. Let's see, we have to divide by that. Yes, that's right. And that goes up here, negative 11. Whoops. Negative 11x. And before we do this, we have to do the multiplication here. We wrote this down from what we had here. And now we have to multiply that by x and then by 5. So negative 11x times x is negative 11x squared. And negative 11x times 5 is negative 55x. So negative 11x squared minus a negative 11x squared just cancels out to 0. And then you have to do negative 2 minus negative 55. That'll come out to be 53x. And drop this minus 1. And we repeat this process one more time. We have to figure out what we multiply x by to get 53x. So write it out like this, 53x over x. The only thing that cancels out is an x on the top and the bottom, and you're left with a 53. So write that up here, and then go back and multiply 53 by x and 53 by 5. 53 times x is 53x, and then 53 times 5 is going to be 265. And subtract. These cancel out. And negative 1 minus 265 is a negative 266. So your final answer is 3x squared minus 11x plus 53 and a remainder of negative 266. Solution for the practice problem. We have to figure out what we multiply x by to get 4x to the third. And remember, you can write it out as 4 times x times x times x and put it over the x. This cancels with one of the x's on the top. So it's 4x squared. Now go back and multiply 4x squared by x and by 3 to come up with 4x to the third plus 12x squared. And then subtract to get these to cancel out. And 3 minus a positive 12 should be a negative 9x squared. And drop the minus 5x. Now we have to figure out what we multiply x by to get negative 9x squared. So write it out like this. And you'll notice that x cancels with an x on the top. Leaves you with negative 9x, which you put right here. And now multiply that minus 9x by x and by 3 to come up with negative 9x squared minus 27x. Subtract to get these to cancel out, and negative 5 minus a negative 27 is going to be a positive 22x, and drop the plus 2. Now what do we multiply x by to get 22x plus 2? You can write out 22x and divide it by x. X's cancel. We're left with 22, which we put on the end. And now multiply 22 by x and 22 by 3 to get 22x plus 66. And subtract. 2 minus 66. It's a negative 64. So you should have 4x squared minus 9x plus 22 and a remainder of negative 64. The solution to the practice problem, we have to figure out what we multiply x by to get 6x to the third. And that's going to be 6x squared. Now multiply 6x squared by x and by minus 1 to get 6x to the third minus 6x squared. Subtract, these will cancel out, and now negative 5 minus a negative 6 is a positive 1x squared. So we just write x squared. And drop the 3x. So now what do I multiply x by to get x squared? That's going to be x. And now go back and multiply x by x minus 1. That's x squared minus x. Subtract. The x squares cancel out. And 3 minus a negative 1 is going to be 4. 4x. And drop the minus 5. What do I multiply x by to get 4x? And that would be a plus 4. Multiply 4 by x minus 1 and come up with 4x minus 4. Subtract. These cancel. Negative 5 minus a negative 4 is a negative 1. So you should have 6x squared plus x plus 4 with a remainder of negative 1.